For today's homework, you're just going to be filling out a notes page on an introduction to inequalities and how we can represent those inequalities in different ways. If you do not have the page that you received in class today to fill out for notes, I have gone ahead and linked it on my teacher webpage as well as on Edmodo, so hopefully you have a printer and can print that up if you forgot to bring this home with you or you have lost it. So we're going to actually be filling out the three boxes titled number line, inequality, and interval first. And some of the things I say in this section may not make total sense to you until we do some of the examples in a few minutes. So just kind of bear with me while we get some of this background knowledge taken care of. And I think, like I said, it will come together for you as we move through it. So first, let's look at the number line box. There's only three things that we need to pay attention to when we put things on the number line. First, we need to know that we have open circles or dots, and open circles are used when x is not included in the solution. However, a closed circle indicates that x is included in the solution. And then for the remainder of the number line, we shade the numbers x could be. So now over in the inequality box, this is super simple. We use the symbols greater than or equal to, less than, and less than or equal to. And then interval is referring to a notation, which is like a shorthand for how we can show our solution. So we have the verbal description we'll talk about, the number line description. We can write it as an inequality. We can also write it in interval notation. So the first thing you need to know is list the endpoints from left to right. And then the next part, we're going to kind of write a little bit. So write a little bit, so write kind of small. Parentheses act like open dots or open circles. Brackets act like closed dots or circles. And then we have infinity and negative infinity, which act as our arrows on the number line. All right, so let's go ahead and start getting through all this. So our first symbol is greater or greater than. And there's some key words that mean greater. I'm going to give you one, and then I want you to try to come up with your own that we can talk about in class tomorrow. So I'm going to tell you more. That's the key word I'm going to give you. So now you try to come up with some. A verbal description, x is greater than 4. It's kind of like writing a sentence. Okay. As far as a number line is concerned, so we always start with an open circle, and we label it 4 because it's telling us 4 is the important number here. X is greater than 4. It doesn't say x can equal 4. X can only be greater than 4. So I'm going to leave that as an open circle. And then I shade anywhere x could be. So anything that makes x is greater than 4 true. So that's going to be to the right because that's where the numbers get bigger. So if I said, is 5 a solution to this inequality? You would say yes, because it's greater than 4. Is 2 a solution to this inequality? No, because 2 is less than 4. It is not greater. if I said, is 4 a solution to this inequality, you would have to say no, because x has to be greater than 4. It can't equal 4. As an inequality, we just use the symbols. X is greater than 4. And finally, we have the interval notation. So we're going to list the endpoints from left to right. So my left endpoint is 4. My right endpoint is infinity because the arrow indicates infinity, and because it's going to the right, that's positive. It's an open circle, so I need a parentheses by the 4. Infinity, although we know that's the endpoint, we can never really reach infinity. We just approach it, so that's also going to be a parentheses on the right side. All right, next we have less or less than. Again, I'm going to give you one of the keywords. So I'm going to give you smaller. And you see if you can come up with some others. Verbally, x is less than 4 is the example that's given. So on a number line, again, I start with an open circle. I label it with a 4. It says x is less than 4. It can't equal 4, so I'm going to leave that circle open. X is less, which means I'm moving to the left because numbers get smaller to the left on a number line. And that's all I have to do to graph it on a number line. Using an inequality symbol, x is less than 4. And finally, interval notation. I'm going to start with my endpoints. So my left endpoint is actually negative infinity. My right endpoint is 4. So just like positive infinity, I can approach it, but I can't reach it. I also can never reach negative infinity. So that's going to be a parentheses. I can get to 4 or all the way up to 4, but 4 is not included. So 4 is not a solution because 4 is not less than 4. So again, it's going to be a parentheses. Next we have greater than or equal to. So I'm going to try to fit this in here. So now we can be greater than something, or we can also equal it. So the key word I'm going to start you with is at least. If I say you have to read for at least 30 minutes, that means you can read for 30 minutes or longer. So that's greater than or equal to. Verbally, x is greater than or equal to 4. So on a number line, we know we can go ahead and label 4 because that's what our example gives us. Now though, it says x is greater than or equal to. This indicates I need to shade the circle in or make a closed dot because I can equal 4. And then it's going to be greater than, so it's going to move to the right. So the closed dot indicates I can equal 4 and I can be anything greater because the arrow is going to the right. As far as an inequality is concerned, x is greater than or equal to 4. The line underneath that inequality symbol tells you it could also equal it. And then finally, our interval notation, we start with our endpoints again. So I start at 4 on the left, and I go to positive infinity. This time, though, I had a closed circle. I can equal 4. So that's going to be a bracket on the left. I still can't reach infinity. I can only approach it, so it's going to be a parentheses. The last thing we're going to talk about today is that less than or equal to symbol. And the keyword I'm going to give you, I think above I said at least, so now I'm going to give you at most. And you try to come up with some other things that might mean that. Verbally, we have x is less than or equal to 4. So as far as the number line is concerned, again, you're starting at 4 because that's what the example gives us. It's less than or equal to, so I know I've got a shade in that circle. It's going to be less than, so this time I'm graphing to the left because the numbers to the left on the number line are smaller than 4. For the inequality, x is less than or equal to 4. And finally, I have the interval notation, so I'm going to go ahead and put my endpoints. My left endpoint is negative infinity. My right endpoint is 4. Again, I can never approach infinity or negative infinity. I mean, I can never equal infinity or negative infinity. I can only approach it. So that's going to be a parentheses on the left. But I have a closed dot, which means 4 is included. So I'm going to put a little bracket around it. The last two things that you see on your paper, the and the or words, we will talk about those when we get to compound inequalities in a couple of weeks. So we'll be referring back to this paper and adding to it. It's just not information that you need at this exact moment, so we'll add that in after that first test. So hopefully you got through this okay. Make sure you're able to tell me to read a number line. So for example, the first example we did together, you need to be able to see a picture like that and know x is greater than 4 and understand why the third one down, x is greater than or equal to 4, is different. Also, if I ask you, looking at the first one, as I talked about earlier, is 6 a solution? You need to be able to tell me, yes, it is, because 6 is greater than 4. If I ask you, looking at that first example again, can x, or is 4 a solution? You need to say no, because the inequality says I have to be greater than 4, and 4 is equal to 4. It's not greater than. So just be prepared for that. If I ask you about parentheses versus brackets, understand that one means an open dot, one means a closed dot. Understand the difference between an open dot and a closed dot. The greater than versus greater than or equal to, less than versus less than or equal to. And make sure you have this paper with you tomorrow so you have it to refer to as we move on with inequalities. Have a good night.